For this reason, we need something to convert the string into an integer, and this process is known as type conversion or typecasting. So we can convert integer to string, string to integer, integer to float, float to integer, or even string to float also. That depends on the data that we are willing to convert. So let's convert this age type of variable and store it into another variable. Let's say age integer equal to, now we are converting this string type of data into integer. So for that we need to call a function called int, which will take the string type of data and convert it into integer. So that is not mandatory that it will only take a string type of data. It can also take float type of data also, but for input function it returns the data of type string. So we are converting it to integer so that we can add 2 or 4 with the age. So now if we check the type of age int variable, let me check that, and then you can see that it is printing. Oh, first of all we need an input, and it is printing it is class of type integer. So what we are doing is, this input function by default convert any input to string data type. Then we are converting this string data type into an integer using this int function, so that we can later on do some arithmetic operations on that. So let me remove this one and let us try again to add 2 with the age variable, but this time the variable integer variable is changed to age int. So I will rename it to age int, and let us run the code. So I am entering 4. Oh my god, I am entering 4 and it should print 6, and yes, it is printing 6. Now if we are using the same concept, same thing in multiple number of lines, that will increase the total number of lines in our code, and that is a bad practice, and we don't want to make our code complex, right? What else we can do, we can remove this line of code and directly convert the input into integer in the same line using the int function. And let me remove it also, and now if we run the code again, then you will see the same output. Let me enter and it is printing your age is 6. So this is a shortcut, you can say, that we are taking the input as a string and converting it into an integer in the same line. So this is how we can convert the input type to different data type. Let us go back to the Colab so that we can see further examples. Let me make a code cell, and here now let us learn about these 4 types of type conversion that we are seeing here: integer to string, then string to integer, integer to float, and float to integer. First of all, let us take a variable called value, and we will take the input inside of this variable. Let us say enter a value, then we will check the type of that variable to make sure that the type conversion is working successfully, working correctly. So let us print the type, and in the next line let me make one more code cell, and in the next line we will convert this value to integer data type. So let me take one more variable for that, and here we will convert this value variable into integer. Print the type of, now let me run the code and shift and enter, it will run the code. Now it is asking for the input, so let me enter an input, let's say 3, and you can see that it is of type string, the value given here. And in the next code we will try to convert this string into an integer. Let me run that, and here we are getting an error that value int is not defined. There we have a problem in variable name. So let me run that again, and you can see that it is converted, this value is being converted to integer type and being stored in the value int. Now if we are checking the type of this variable, then you can see that it is of type integer. So this is how we can convert a string type of variable into an integer. Now let me rerun this code again, and this time we will enter a text, let's say a text, and you can see that this variable type is of class string. then let us try to convert the string type of variable into integer, and if you run it we will get an error that invalid literal for int with base 10 a text. So a text is not a number, so it cannot be converted to integer. So that is the problem. If we are inserting a number, the input will take it as a string, but it can be converted into integer later. But if we are inserting a text, that cannot be converted to base 10 or a numeric value, right? I think you got it. So this is a common sense, right? If the numbers can only be converted to integer and float, text can never be converted into integer unless we are try to convert this text into binary format. So that is advanced topic. Now let us try to convert the a integer to float and float to integer. Now I will rerun this code again, and this time I will enter a value called 12. So 12 is stored inside of this value variable as a string data type. Now instead of this int, I'll use this time float to convert the input value into float. Let me rename this also and run the code again. So it is converting the string data type into float using this float function. Now if we check the value, so let us print the value as well so that we can see what is the change in the value. And you can see we are inserting 12. Let me print that. So we are inserting 12 and it is printing 12.0. So that is the difference between integer and float. Integer is not having any point in it, but for a float value it is it defines a fraction, so it contains it contains the point. Now let us convert this float back to integer. For that I will create one more code cell, and this time I will take one more value called value int, and then we will convert an integer a variable to integer, and the variable is value float. Then let us print the value int, and you can see that it is printing the integer part only. So this is how it works. Now let us see one more example, and this time I will insert a really fractional value. So let's say 12.5. What will be the output? So it is already float. It is this code is taking the input and we are converting into float, and it is showing that class float and the value is 12.5. Now let us try to convert this float value into integer in this code, and while we are converting you can see that the total fractional part is being removed and the only integer part is being printed. So this is how the integer function works. When we convert a float value to integer, it removes the entire fractional part from it, and when we convert an integer to float, then it adds zero point 0 with the integer part. So I think you got it. And if we try to convert a float to string, that is a easy process, right? So a number can always be converted to string, but always a string cannot be converted to a number, because a text cannot be converted to a number, but a number can always be converted to a string. So that is all for type conversion, and in the next video we will learn about the multiple variable assignment.